order. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right.
I can hear you.
Okay, I will turn it over to the board clerk for roll call.
Okay, I will call each member's name. Please say here. Travis Avery.
Here.
Brian Teed.
Here.
Stephen Powers. No, he was here before. Stephen
Here.
Powers. Okay. James Lipscomb. Bucky Coates.
Here.
Andrea Merritt.
Here.
Frank Price.
Here.
James Moore. Marty Bizzle.
Here.
Okay. Are there any adjustments needed to the agenda?
There are none.
If there are none, we will move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections needed to the minutes? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move approval. Second.
Sounds like approval by board member Bizzle and approval by board member Coates. Did I get that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I just can't see everyone's faces on my screen. Okay, minutes approved. Oh, wait. Now I'll turn it over to the board clerk for a vote.
Okay. In order to ensure the record accurately reflects the vote for this item, please indicate your vote when I call your name. Travis Avery.
Yes.
Brian Teed.
Yes.
Stephen Powers.
Yes.
Bucky Coates.
Yes.
Andrea Merritt.
Yes.
Frank Price.
Yes.
Marty Bizzle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Minutes approved. The next item on the agenda is 4A, Old Business 2020-07-SP Sam's Express Car Wash Major Site Plan. We will now hear from staff.
Maybe no.
Hey, Sharon, do you have it?
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Good evening. So just to get started, for the essence of public record, board, you did hear this in June for Sam's Express Car Wash Major Site Plan, which is 2020-07-SP for development of a automated car wash with vacuum and fuel sales. And the site address is 12856 U.S. Highway Business, just for public record, and it's about 3.75 acres of property that is zone B3. If you see here on the aerial, last month, just to recap, this site plan came before you as it's shown here, with two entrance access points off of the access road as it aligns along US Highway 70. However, as we went into the review, the board was not comfortable with the site plan access and asked the applicant to go back and take a second look at possible shifting of the site. And therefore, after the planning board meeting in June, the applicant did submit a revision back to the TRC committee, which closed the site to the west, closest to the building, to the car wash main building here. And they also showed a stacking. We did submit that through TRC and received feedback from NCDOT, who did not have an issue with the access being closed. However, fire did have issue with it in terms of life safety. In the event that that was only the access point was only one to get to the site and it was blocked, in the event of an emergency, they would not be able to get into the site. So therefore, we had the applicant go back to the original site plan. And as you can see here, they've shown stacking to the east portion of the property as it would come out of the property onto the access road, therefore getting out into the highway. And just to reiterate again, this property is across from the Walmart Shopping Center, adjacent to McLaurin Funeral Home on US Highway 70. As I stated, TRC did receive TRC certification back in June to develop about 3,100 square foot of field canopy, about 4,100 square feet of automated car wash here, as well as gas sales with proposed 21 parking spaces, vacuum stations. Their architectural plans have been reviewed and are consistent with the town of Clayton, and as well as their dumpster will be designed to match the elements of the building itself. Does the board have any questions for staff as it relates to this proposed site design?
I have just one comment. This is vastly improved over what was first presented.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Sharon. At this time then, we can go ahead and call on the applicant.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, she did a good job of summarizing kind of where we are right now. We heard the feedback from the June board meeting, and we did try to go back and redesign the site, adjust the driveways. We actually resubmitted that back to town staff, like Sharon mentioned. Unfortunately, we did get the feedback from the fire life safety to keep that second access open, which is why we kind of punted and went back to the layout that we did have. But we did try to make a good faith effort to listen to the town and your concerns. Unfortunately, however you look at it, the fire marshal did come back with that feedback that we need to keep the second driveway. But other than that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have or any other questions you had about the site.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you for making the change. I think it's a whole lot better than it was, and I appreciate your cooperation and the new site plan. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, hearing none, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this matter? Okay, if not, I'll turn this over to the board for their consideration. Are there any other comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion to approve site plan as submitted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Board Member Coates and a second by Board Member Powers. Hopefully I got that correct. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Then I will turn this over to the board clerk for voting.
Okay, I just wanted to announce that James Lipscomb and James Moore, I believe, signed on. So, In order to ensure the record accurately reflects the vote for this item, please indicate your vote when I call your name. Travis Avery,
Yes.
Brian Teed,
Yes.
Stephen Powers,
Yes.
James Lipscomb,
Yes.
Bucky Coates,
Yes.
Andrea Merritt,
Yes.
Frank Price,
Yes.
James Moore,
Yes.
Marty Bizzle.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next order of business is item 5A on the agenda, public hearing for 2020-97-RZ Champion East rezoning. So again, as we've done previously, this item will be deliberated by the board this evening, but we will not vote on it until next month's planning board meeting. At this time, I think we're going to hear from the town attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's correct. As part of a COVID-19 legislation and Session Law 2020-3, it allows for remote meetings to hold public hearings. But for public hearings, there is a 24-hour comment period required after the hearing before the board can make any kind of decision. So as the chairwoman said, we'll hear the application, but the actual item will be voted on at next month's meeting.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions about that? Okay, if not, then we will hear from staff.
Tonight we're here to.
I think there you go. You're unmuted now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm through the computer instead of the phone. Anyway, apologize for that. So tonight I'm here to present the Champion East Rezone Project 2020-97-RZ. It's an approximate 1.85 acre piece of property just south of Business Highway 70. Everyone's familiar with the, I believe it's Burger King. It's just south of that property. It's currently in a vacant use, but it's proposed to have a development that will take place in the future. But tonight we're only going to hear on the proposed rezone. There are currently two zones on the property. There's an OI, or the northern parcel at the top, and below are single-family R8 residential properties. The applicant is proposing to rezone the entire parcel to R6. You see from the current zone, you can see the two different zones, one highlighted in blue, the other one in an orange. Under R8, the proposal is to go to a more of a burnt orange, if you will, for an R6 for the proposed rezone. Here's a corner of the street view. It's from the corner of Everett and Champion. As you can see, the site is vacant, and it's been vacant for quite some time. And staff's done an analysis on the property, and we find that it is consistent with the goals and objectives and strategies of the comp plan. The future land use map is zoned high density residential community center. And although the proposal we're looking at is not part of this rezone, it would still be consistent with the future zoning if approved. And from there, staff recommends approval of the rezone request, and we're open for any questions if you happen to have any. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Hearing none, then we can go ahead and call upon the applicant.
Thank you.
I didn't know much.
Donnie, did you want to say anything, or is Nathan there?
Sounded like someone was attempting to speak. Did we lose them?
Yeah.
Let's see.
I do see Mr. Adams is signed in.
He's there, Mr. Adams. You are muted. I don't know if you're attempting to speak right now.
Okay, I'm trying to talk. This is Donnie Adams. Can you hear me?
You can give it a try. You sound a little bit quiet, but.
Donnie, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. This is Donnie Adams with Adams and Hodge Engineering, professional engineer. I'm here on behalf of the client tonight. A few things that I would add is I'm happy to read the findings of fact which are part of the record and accepted by staff as part of our application. You've heard from the staff that our request to rezone to R6 is consistent with the Town of Clayton Comprehensive Plan 2040. And again, I can continue through these findings of fact if you would like.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, if not, thank you. At this time, we can turn it over to the board clerk for any public or written comments.
I did not receive any comments.
Thank you. Then we can go to the board for their consideration. Does anyone on the board have any comments they would like to make?
Just as a reminder, Andrea, that this is, they will not vote on this tonight. Feel free to deliberate as much as possible, but it will be at the next meeting following the 24-hour rule, which you'll discuss in a minute, just as a reminder.
Thank you. Go ahead, Frank, did you have something to say?
I just had a question. Will this property involve a recombination of those several different properties that are involved?
Whenever the project comes through and they choose to build on it, they will have to recombine depending on the layout of the proposed design, but they will not be able to build over property lines. They will have to recombine and meet setbacks. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions from the board? I just was gonna in the spirit of deliberation, throw out my comments that it looks to me to be a very logical request and consistent with the surrounding uses. So we're not voting tonight, but just throwing that out there as we think about this over the next month and come back together. Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Written comments will be accepted from the public until midnight on July 28th, 2020. All public comments should be sent to the attention of the board clerk, C. Freeman at townofclaytonnc.org, or by phone at 919-553-5002. The next item on the agenda is 6A, Old Business 2020-76-SP, Riverwood Athletic Club Tract B2 Major Site Plan. And now we'll hear from staff.
Jeff, I can't hear you right now. You might still be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now I can hear you.
Okay. I guess I have to unmute two mutes. Modern technology. I can't wait to go back in person. Hopefully we only have one microphone to mute. So anyway, start from the beginning. Again, my name is Jeff Keynes, I'm planner with the town of Clayton. I'm here to present the Riverwood Athletic Club Track 2B. It's a major site plan. File number 2020-076-SP. The request is to construct 3 buildings with retail on the first floor with 8 single single bedroom apartments above that. As the site plan shows below, is at the corner of Charleston Drive and Saracen. Athletic Club Boulevard's the main avenue coming into the site. And as you drive into the project, it will be located on the right-hand side. The overall zoning for this specific piece of property is B1. To the north of it, I believe, is R10, so it's a residential 10. The overall site is approximately 3.15 acres in total size. As stated before, there's going to be 3 bedrooms with retail on the bottom. The applicant has proposed parking spaces, 66 total parking spaces, 3 of those being handicapped, and general access would be taken off of Charleston Drive. And I have pictures that are covering the right-hand side of the site plan, so hopefully people are able to see that, or they're able to have reviewed it prior to the hearing tonight. So then, going on to the architectural elevations, the overall structure, there are 2 general types of building elevations for this project. This is one of them showing. This one has a brick veneer on the bottom half, which surrounds the entire building itself with a metal awning on the first floor and windows and doors. And here's the second type right here. Has similar architectural features. When the applicant comes in for building permits, they will have the opportunity to choose which building design they would choose, either the first one or the second one. And I did not include a landscape plan in this proposal because I know the applicant has one in his PowerPoint presentation, so you'll be able to see what the landscape looks like. For the future land use map is zoned, the comprehensive plan shows a medium density residential with the community center overlay. So it is consistent with both the comprehensive 2040 plan as well as surrounding developments that are in the localized area. Many of you, I'm sure, have driven through the Riverwood developments over the many years and has seen the development as increased over the years. This is just a continuation on the designs and proposals that have already been constructed in the local area. So to conclude, staff does recommend approval of the major site plan, and I will conclude the staff report and pending any questions from the planning board.
Thank you, Jeff. Does anyone have questions for staff?
Yes, Bucky Coates, I have a couple of questions. The first floor plan that I have of the first building indicates an apartment in the bottom floor. And then,
yes, sir.
So that would make 25 apartments.
It could. The reason why there's an apartment on the first floor is to meet ADA requirements. The building code requires that one of the dwellings need to be accessible for people with disabilities.
So
correct. It could potentially, yes, be 25.
So there's 25. Okay. Can you explain to me how you arrive? What's the formula for parking for a 1-bedroom and then for the businesses? How did you arrive at 66?
Well, I can go in general terms what the development code says. For this specific application, we do have the applicant here to present and to answer questions, so he may be able to go into further detail of how the number was derived. For the residential units, most of those are based on bedrooms, number of bedrooms that are in the dwelling unit. And as for the commercial side, is based on the square footage of the proposed space, in this case, retail. So for example, I believe it's 200 square foot for every parking space for retail, and is usually at least 1 parking space for residential.
So our code is for 1-bedroom apartment complex, it's only 1 parking place per apartment.
I'll have to double check that one, but again, maybe the applicant can go into further detail
Okay, thank you.
with that one.
Bucky? It's one, so if they're one-bedroom units, it is one parking space per one-bedroom unit. And
Okay,
technically, so this is zoned B1, so our B1 and other areas in town is downtown. There's really not standard parking requirements because it's more of your Main Street type feel, but Riverwood has a mixture of its own zoning districts similar to the rest of the town. So they have an ample amount of parking, but to answer your question, it is one per bedroom unit, and then the retail on the bottom does have a requirement per the square footage.
And that would give 23 for the retail space, and that's within square footage. That works out the way that.
I'd have to double check, or get the project manager to double check. And then about the ADA unit, that is per building code. That's something that we cannot get around. That actually came up, if you recall, about a year ago, maybe Riverwood B3 came up, and they did not have a unit on the bottom, but once they came to construction drawing, it was brought up that they had to install a unit to become in compliance with those standards. And it's based on the number of multifamily units and when the requirement is kicked in for a unit on the bottom floor.
I understand that. It just indicated 24, but I guess but the 23 for the businesses, and that includes customers and the workers and everything, seems to be, it looks like there's going to be 3, 4, 5, probably, looks like, maybe the applicant can tell me, it looks like there's going to be like 5 or 6, 3, 4, 5, 7 businesses maybe. Anyway, I can ask the applicant. Thank you. Thank you, Samantha.
Mm-hmm. Thank you to staff. Appreciate that. Any other questions of staff before we move on to the applicant? If not, then we will go ahead and hear from the applicant at this time.
Good evening, Dave DeYoung with Riverwild. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Jeff, can you put up the presentation for me? All right, great. Jeff, you can go to the second slide. Great, thank you. As Jeff said, this is tract B2 in Riverwood. It is, this is an older aerial. Of course, it was taken from the Johnson County property tax records. If you drove out there today, both sides of Riverwood Athletic Club Boulevard going all the way to the roundabout are developed. And in addition to that, the parcel to the southeast of the highlighted tract is tract B3, which is the tract that Samantha was talking about that recently came through at the same type of building. So this is an infill project. We are continuing to go with the design that was approved back in the early 90s. That includes the retail on the first floor with apartments on the second and third floors. As Samantha also mentioned, the ADA required units are being put on the first floor because of the zoning district that it's in. The parking, Bucky, as you mentioned, is to code. That includes the on-street parking that's on the street. We do think that there will be some symbiotic relationship with the parking on this property like it is on all the existing properties now. The residents are usually there during the evening. The businesses are usually there during the day. So the parking is shared throughout the day and night between the individual units, both front and back, but it is parked to code to handle both the residential and the retail components. Next slide. This is just showing the zoning district. As Ms. Wallenweber said, when Riverwood was approved, there was no such thing as a planned development in the town of Clayton. So each area within the development was given its own zoning. This was intended to be a very traditional style neighborhood with a dense urban core with apartments and retail, and then surrounded by residential of varying sizes as you move away from the urban core out. Of course, they put the urban core near the clubhouse and also near the schools that are at the front of the entrance of this community. As Mr. Kane said, both parcels, or the parcels that are involved in this, are B1, and they are in the future land use plan planned for this type of development. Next slide. This is the landscape plan Jeff mentioned. The development program is 24 one-bedroom apartments and 7,008 square feet of retail. We are not going to be doing 25 apartments. There are only 8 apartments per building. They are one bedroom. They can vary in size. The retail and office component between the 3 buildings will total 7,008 square feet. So that's 7,008 divided by 3 to go into each of the buildings. The square footage can change a little bit based on the size of the apartment and on the first floor, of course. The landscape plan, fully landscaped to meet current code. The trees that run along Athletic Club Boulevard in Charleston, I believe, is the street that it turns into as it passes the roundabout, are the same crepe myrtle trees that run along the entire front of the existing project, moving from the front entrance down into the community. And the rest of the landscaping is consistent with what you'd see in other areas of Riverwood Athletic Club and parking areas. The next slide. As Jeff said, we have 2 separate elevations. The reason for the 2 separate elevations is so that all 3 buildings don't look exactly the same. That's in keeping with the buildings that are existing today. We vary the architectural elevation so that it has some, at least, curb appeal as you move from building to building, and not everything looks the same. This one has dormers on it. The other one has a different facade. But you can see how it's laid out with the potential retail on the first floor and the apartments above. Next slide. That is about as easy as it gets for me. Since Jeff did such a good job, I can answer any questions anyone has regarding the project.
Thank you, Mr. DeYoung. Are there any questions for the applicant?
James Moore, I have a question. On the 24 one-bedroom units, so the assumption is that they'll all be rented by singles. Let's assume 50% are rented by couples with 2 vehicles. I know we're dealing with code, but in reality, I seriously doubt anybody that's ever been a landlord with 1-bedroom units. The reality is 50 to 60% of them will probably be rented by couples, bringing at least 2 vehicles to the property per site. And I got to give it to Mr. Coates because he was spot on about another parking issue at Smithfields early on that's came to fruition even during COVID. I know we have code, but in reality, there's not enough parking for the number of residential and commercial uses on that site. So how would we accommodate that? Where would the overflow be?
Sure. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a couple things I'll mention. One, this is an ongoing project. All the other buildings that you see on the aerial that are there are retail with one-bedroom apartments over the top of them. So this is a repeated pattern from the very front of the development to the back of the development. And clearly, we do not have parking problems on the apartments and retail for the rest of the project. And there's a pretty good mix of retail and office space on those. It is in an internal retail and residential mix. So a lot of people that live here and use the businesses here, there's not a lot of outside people coming to those businesses that are in downtown Riverwood. So that being said, it's a shared parking situation. You've got 24 units with 24 parking spaces, but you have 66 parking spaces overall. So there's an additional 42 parking spaces to accommodate any overflow parking that occurs in the evenings for people who have 2 cars. There's on-street parking. There's additional parking in the parking lot. There's additional parking in the other buildings and the other uses as well. What we find and what we have found with the with the 1-bedroom apartments we already have there is that most of those people are leaving to go to work. They are singles. They are going to work. They're gone all day while those businesses are operating. They come back in the evening. And there's parking spaces available for them. And if they have overflow parking, or a need for a second car spot, that car spot is available in the retail spaces in the evening.
No, I appreciate your response, but I know if it's the same area I'm talking about with the Domino's, and we haven't really tested it out because of the dance studio that's in one of the commercial because of COVID, but that dance studio that moved into one of those commercial sites just a few months ago in the evenings, once COVID is over, it's going to, if you understand the type of traffic, a dance studio, and I have a 6-year-old little girl, a dance studio will contribute to that area. It will be a significant problem, but that's here or there. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question, Mr. DeYoung. David, I counted, you talked about parking on the street. The back of the building, my understanding, backs up to Athletic Boulevard, right?
It's the front of the building, front up against Athletic Club Boulevard, and all the parking is to the rear. Except for the parking.
Are the customers coming in from the front of this building is, hold on a minute, let me find, show a picture of, can you pull up the picture that's going to be seen from the Boulevard, Riverwood?
I think Jeff's looking for it. I don't have control of the slide presentation.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you this, Bucky. I think I know where you're going. You can access these buildings from both the front and the back. You can either access them from the on-street parking in the front, in the parallel parking spaces, or you can park in the back, and there's adequate spaces back there, and walk through or around the building to get to the front.
But okay, I guess I was really, I had these completely backwards, because I thought the like from the back apartments up there, as you first come in on Riverwood Boulevard, the front looks really nice when you're coming down Riverwood Boulevard, but if the back of it was facing Riverwood, it wouldn't look too nice to me. That's the view right there. It's going to be on Riverwood Boulevard.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. I only count though, David, 55 parking places in the parking lot, and you keep talking about overflow parking on the street. That's part of your 66, the way I count.
That is correct. We're using on-street parking to accommodate some additional space, and of course that's in keeping with what runs through the entire downtown section of Riverwood Athletic Club.
Good discussion. Are there any other questions or comments for the applicant at this time? Okay, if not, is there anyone else in the audience who wants to speak on this matter? Hearing none, I will turn it over to the board for their consideration. Any other comments from the board?
I have a question, Andrea. Can you hear Steve Powers?
Yep, we can hear you.
The staff report referred specifically to 25 apartments. The applicant's report referred specifically to 24 apartments. How many apartments are we talking about?
24. The plans say 24. There was a confusion about if the one unit on the bottom, the ADA unit, if that counted as part of the total 24, or if that was in addition to. But we got clarification from the applicant in his presentation that there's going to be 24 total apartment units.
So does that mean one of the buildings is only going to have 3 apartments, or upstairs?
Dave, you want to answer that, please?
Am I still unmuted?
No, you're good.
Okay, good. The entire building will have 24, or sorry, each building will have 8 apartments in it. The configuration of how the apartments will lay out depends on where equipment is and other things in each building. So the answer is one floor could have 3 units, one floor could have 4. They're going to have more than that. They're going to have 8 units in each building. So you could have 4, 3, and 1, I suppose.
So the diagram or the drawings on the plans there that show the second and third floor layouts.
Yes.
4 apartments on each one. That's not really the true what's going to happen.
Well, I think that's the plan for most of them. I don't think we have to have an ADA unit on each first floor level. So one building may have the ADA unit, the others may not. So it could change.
I understand what you just said there, that one building would have the ADA unit, but would not that building also have the same configuration on the second and third floor?
Certainly in terms of square footage it would, because the outside building envelope does not change based on how many units we put on each floor. Each floor is, these are representative of the architectural plans we've submitted on previous buildings. So.
Right, but your architectural plan, that at least the one that was with the agenda, has 4 apartments on each of the buildings' second and third floor. If one of those is only going to have 3 apartments on it, that wouldn't seem to work, because you'd have to redesign the whole floor on that one apartment if you're going to have one ADA apartment on one first floor and end up with 24 total apartments. That means you're putting 23 apartments on the upper 2 floors, which means one of those floors plans that have been submitted are not going to be followed.
That's probably true, and you guys do not approve architectural floor plans. You approve elevations and you approve site plans and landscape plans. The internal layout of a building would ultimately get approved by the building department to make sure it meets building code. So what we do is we
follow up on that. Thank you for that. But yes, so the site plan approval is going to be based on your architectural elevations on the outside. They're going to build the building as shown, and the interior floor plan is not something that the planning board looks at. That is determined at a later time, just as previous site plans that have come before you all. One example, West End, that came before you a few months ago. You saw the shell of the building, the inside layout, whether it's 5 tenants or 5 shell spaces or 2, is determined at a later time. So this is approving the parking, all the site elements, and that includes the site plan and sidewalks and all those types of things. So the actual floor plan is not something that the board considers. But they have to build them to as shown. There is minor and major modifications for site plans. So if something changes substantially from what is considered tonight, they would have to come back before the board.
And it sounds like, go ahead, Bucky.
If one of those apartments end up being 2 bedrooms, does that have to come back to us?
It does not, because permitted by right. So this is just a major site plan. Everything they're doing is by right. It's not it's not a conditional or a special. It will for planning board to be conditional use. So as long as they're within the certain thresholds, then they will be just an administrative review.
Thank you.
And maybe just also to clarify, the fact that it is 24 units, so it's not like we don't have to worry about parking for 25. We clarified that it is 24. Units, and basing the parking off of that. So that clears that up as well. And for me, I was just going to add to the conversation that, looking at where this is going and the type of uses that are already in that area, I don't have a concern with that number of parking spaces for that number of apartment units. I see it as more of an urban area where, you know, parking is kind of more fluid and juggled and shared between businesses and residences throughout the day. Does look more like what happens in a downtown area in Clayton. So I'm fine with that number.
Mr. DeYoung, I just had one question about the trash enclosure shown on the north side of that development, that site plan. It looks like the trash enclosure a little bit down the strip of businesses is all the way on the north side of the parking, and I was wondering if you guys had considered that for this site plan as well. Having it kind of closer to the businesses, not only it's kind of screwing up the sight lines and screwing up your sidewalk, but obviously you've got trash closer to businesses as well at that point. And I just wondered if there was anything prohibiting you guys from putting it all the way to the north.
Sure. Actually, there is something prohibiting us from moving it all the way to the north. The open space area in Riverwood is actually zoned R10, which is a residential zoning category, even though it'll never get developed as residential. And the code requires a 50-foot separation between dumpsters and residentially zoned property. So we started off having the dumpster on that side and then quickly realized with staff's assistance that because that open space is zoned residential, that we had to move the dumpster to the other side to meet code. We would have preferred it to be on the other side to be consistent with all the other uses along that corridor. But that would require a variance and we could make it work. So there was no way to demonstrate a hardship.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments from the board at this time?
It's not just a question, probably more for clarification on my part. More so for staff, maybe Samantha could answer this. As far as the parking requirements, you know, everything as far as requirements get back to off-street parking, but it appears that we are counting the on-street parking to meet the requirement. Are we saying that the development meets the requirements of parking due to the shared parking analysis, I guess you would say?
So I did the calculations, and if you do the 7,008 square footage of retail divided by 200 square feet, which is you have to have one parking spot per 200, every 200 square feet, that's going to give you 35 spaces. And then you add your 24 residential units, that's going to put you at 59 parking spaces. And they said they had a combined of 66. So they do meet the threshold for the parking requirements. And parking is something we will look at in our code rewrite. We will begin that code rewrite next fiscal year. This year, we're working on the 160D and the comp plan update. So that is something that the board has felt strongly that we need to make sure we take a good look at. So we're definitely going to do that. But at this time, we need the code requirements. And again, a lot of these shops, as he stated, and in these types of urban centers in your neighborhood unit, you could call it, people are going to walk there. A lot of their traffic will maybe be bikes, walking, golf carts, those types of things. That's what I would feel. I don't live out there, so I don't know, but that's what I would assume.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, just looking at it, obviously the parking spaces out front. I mean, to me, it's even though they may be on the right of way on the street, they're going to be utilized for these businesses. You know, so I totally get that. So I think one thing that was confusing, and I was listening to Bucky and his comments, that the site plan actually said on-site spaces were 66. And I think, you know, we're counting those 10 on the street. So maybe that may have led to some of the confusion. So, but thank you for answering that, Smith.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? If not, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
And and a second. We have a motion by Board Member Price and a second by Board Member Powers. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And sorry, just to confirm, the motion is to approve the site plan as presented?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there is a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will turn it over to the board clerk for voting.
Okay, so in order to ensure the record reflects the vote for this item, please indicate your vote when I call your name. Travis Avery.
Yes.
Brian Teed.
Yes.
Stephen Powers.
Yes.
James Lipscomb.
Yes.
Bucky Coates.
Yes.
Andrea Merritt.
Yes.
Frank Price.
Yes.
James Moore.
James, I think you're muted.
Yes.
Marty Bizzle.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is informal discussion and public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak at this time?
Andrew, this is Samantha Willen Weber, Planning Director. I would just like to inform the board of a few personnel items. As of July 6th, Haley was promoted to Senior Planner. And that was effective July 6th. And as of last week, I passed my AICP exam certification. So now we have 3 AICP planners on our staff out of 4 planners total. So that is very impressive. And I'm glad to have that over with and no more studying.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to both of you.
Congratulations.
That's great news. Any other comments at this time?
This is James Moore. Well, and I know Samantha just said we were going to look at parking, and the more you ride around Clayton, you really see that we really have some, especially from some of our newer developments. And I challenge any of us, all of you, to ride through Parkview. If you ride through Parkview, you would see that somehow we missed the boat. It is a public safety nightmare when you look at not enough. If you look at some of the single family homes and how short the driveways are and the number of cars that are parked on both sides of the street, it's a very dangerous looking ride if you ride through there. And so that's something that I think we really need to look at, our parking requirements. The second thing, I've been on the board almost a year and a half, and I believe, and I was thinking, 100% of the projects that we approved have all been starter home communities, starter townhouse communities. Just about everything has been less than 200. And I can tell you from 30 years of working in government, it looks good in the beginning, but by the time we get to the second, third owner, I think it's going to be a tremendous issue for the town. I know the town is looking at growth, but you also have to look at smart growth. And I think you do have to have workforce housing, and I'm not against that. We all started out, we all were young, starting out in our careers, but it has to be a balance. But 100% of the things that we've approved have been starter homes, subdivisions, or townhouse communities. And I believe within a decade, by the time we get to the third owner, it's going to be very problematic for this town to have so many of those units congregated in such a close distance.
Mr. Moore, that's definitely something we're looking at. We're having some pretty in-depth discussions with council members. Thank you for bringing that up. And we're living a lot of lessons learned and hopefully working towards a more different housing product type in Clayton. So thank you for your comments. I do appreciate that. And I forgot one, but I did not forget before we hung up. Chrissy was promoted to a permit specialist as well. So she'll still be helping us with the board, but she is now a permit specialist.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
When are the virtual happy hours for all these things?
Right?
Good question. Okay, thank you, Board Member Moore, for those comments and for the update. Samantha. Any other comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
And sorry, which board member was that? My screen is.
Stephen Powers.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second, this is Marty.
And a second by board member Bizzle. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will turn it over to the clerk for voting.
Okay, to ensure the record reflects the vote for this item, please indicate your vote when I call your name. Travis Avery.
Yes.
Brian Teed.
Yes.
Stephen Powers.
Yes.
James Lipscomb.
Yes.
Bucky Coates.
Yes.
Andrea Merritt.
Yes.
Frank Price.
Yes.
James Moore.
Yes.
Marty Bizzle.
Yes.
Thank you all. Good to see you, and meeting adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hey, everybody.
Good night.